Hey, what's up, guys? Here on the Fire Sports Pod, where everything we do here is fire. You guys know the drill. I'm your host, Zach Jackson. Here is my guest host, Kelly Whiteside. Kelly, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you coming on to the show.
Great to be with you, Zach.
All right, so we have a pretty good show for you guys today. We're going to be going over just college football in general. Kelly, if you wanted to introduce yourself on like what you do in the college football grand scheme of things.
Sure. So currently, right now, I am on the college football playoff selection committee. I was a reporter, national college football reporter for a long time. And the committee is made up of 13 people. And what's unique about this committee is, people that you would expect being on the committee: athletic directors, um, former head coaches, former standout players. And then there's one media spot, which is pretty unusual. That doesn't exist in, say, like the NCAA basketball committee. So I'm that media spot. And what we do is each week during the college football season, beginning the last weekend in October, we meet together in person in Texas and kind of spend 2 full days reviewing the weekend, studying analytics, giving conference reports, kind of going over all the data. And we rank the top 25 teams each week. And then we get to the end of the season and we slot it's been 4 teams in the college football playoff. It expands to 12 next year. The 4 teams, and we do the final top 25. So that's kind of the committee I'm on that determines the college football playoff championship.
So, guys, she's the real deal. Miss Whiteside, I was just going to talk to you a little bit about what's happening, about just the decision making behind. Now it's going to be 12, which is going to be a lot more teams than you are used to. So, how would that impact really the decision making, or will it just be the same old type stuff because of just of what happened this year with all the stuff? Now we don't have to worry about like a team like Florida State being left out. They would have been in, and it would have been pretty cool to see if that was the case. If Love was all perfect and didn't get injured, we would have saw Florida State definitely to compete for the national championship. So what is like your grand scheme of things on trying to make those type of decisions?
Yeah, so it's too bad that we didn't have 12. That would have solved everything this year. I think it's just going to be a lot better that there's 12 teams. Nothing changes in terms of the decision-making process. We're still going to rank the top 25 teams, and obviously there'll be controversy with the 13th team, but just as there is with the basketball tournament, the tournaments every year. So it just is great because it assures that we won't have a situation like we had this year where there was just too many good teams and not enough spots. So it'll definitely make things a little bit better in terms of more teams being more inclusive, not having a kind of really unusual year like we did this year.
All right. Well, that pretty much says a lot when it comes to the 12 teams things. I also think that the 12 teams I always wanted. I've watched college football when I was like 10 or 11, so I started a little while ago. And I've always wanted more teams because I thought that it would probably like increase competition, especially with the NFL, how they do it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes even sometimes there are teams that are right on the cusp, and just because they lose or have one bad game, they just get out of it. But little to pivot off of that, Florida State. I know we had the whole problem with that, but what was your take on? We kind of all know that they're going to be in the draft and whatever the case is, but why all go through all talking all that nonsense about you guys and how you guys made a bad decision leaving them out and all this stuff about you guys? And then they don't start nobody. They had 8 of their starters, quote unquote, their best players not start against Georgia, which they could have made a big statement because if they would have beat them, then everyone would have been like, oh my God, the committee made this bad decision, whatever the case is. But they got killed 60 something to 7. So what was like the whole thing behind that, if you know anything about that?
I think what we saw like across the board, with just the kind of changing landscape in college football in particular. Um, between the transfer portal, in which you have a lot of movement at the end of the season, and then what we've seen is just players opting out, right? That we've heard that phrase so many times, opting out. Who's opting out? That's been a trend for a little bit now, where players, and I get it, right? They don't want to, if they're considered a high draft pick, their livelihoods depend on being healthy, and it's a hard decision to make, obviously, to kind of to sit out a bowl game. But I think that's a combination of these two factors, like what is going on in terms of the transfer portal and so much movement and the ease of movement, that at the end of the season, a lot of guys are entering the transfer portal, so then they wouldn't play for their team. Um, and then with the draft, guys getting ready for the draft, opting out. And we saw some of that stuff with just players on the sideline, like Caleb
Yeah.
Williams at USC and stuff like that. So, it was certainly a lot of players in Florida State's case, and it's pretty dramatic. And I think, they have a lot of prospects. They had a great team
Yeah.
and season. So I think it was that combination of these two things, and obviously the disappointment of not playing in the national championship game. So, you're playing for a bowl win, you're playing for an undefeated season, but it's different than playing for a national championship.
Which is understandable. But for
Mhm.
me, question, do you think Florida State's quarterback who went down with the broken leg, do you think he is going to be, just off of just seeing that bad of an injury? Because I've seen a lot of like RG3 in the NFL, and a lot of quarterbacks that have really been badly injured really don't become the same. And he was probably going to be one of the top prospects the next year, if he didn't get hurt. Hopefully he comes back with a speedy recovery and he's back to normal. Do you think he's going to be back to normal, or is there going to be a little bit of a setback with that type of an injury?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so, right? It was so catastrophic for so many reasons. The injury itself and just the blow to the team. I'm kind of hopeful, like where we're headed in terms of medicine. I know we all flirted with Aaron Rodgers coming back this year, and obviously it's a different injury, but I just think like as medicine gets more advanced and stuff, that we won't see that as much as we've seen in the past, that it's not going to end, even though RG3 is not that long ago, like a lot
Yeah.
has changed in terms of medicine. So I'm kind of hopeful, like it just gets better and better. So there's no such thing as like career ending injuries. And I think one of the guys in the national championship this game kind of showed that too. Like Michael Penix, had the Washington quarterback, had a ton of injuries when he was at Indiana. And obviously it's a concern kind of for his future, but I think he showed this year the ability to see get dinged up in the championship game, but the ability to stay healthy and be one of the best in the country, after kind of a slew of injuries throughout his career. So hopefully, Jordan Travis will be back and back to the level he's capable of playing at.
Yeah, because he was one of a great talent
Yeah.
this year. I always put on Florida State, and it was like some epic play by Jordan Travis every
Mhm.
time. So the last thing, other than for the college football side of things, what are your thoughts on the national championship? Because I had it. I'm an Ohio State fan. You've known from class. If anyone doesn't know, this is Kelly Whiteside, who is my professor at Montclair. So we had class and we talked a lot about college football. And my Ohio State Buckeyes got left out because they sadly lost again to Michigan with Ryan Day. Um, so, what was your thoughts on Michigan winning the national championship with all the controversy from Harbaugh and everything else? Were they just destined, I guess, to win it because of everything that happened, and they just put it all together this year? But with everybody now moving on, like Corum, McCarthy is now gone. Will Michigan be back to that if Harbaugh also leaves too? So what's like any type of reaction to the national championship now? Everybody's leaving. Will Michigan still be those powerhouse team that they've been for the last couple of years if Jim Harbaugh leaves?
Yeah, I mean, great question, Zach. I think the foundation's been set. Like, obviously, this week Jim Harbaugh interviewed, with pro teams, so that's kind of out there. We're not sure if he's going to come back or not. I think if he doesn't come back, I think Michigan is in pretty good shape, because of the foundation, and the way they've recruited and built that program. And as we saw this year, Jim Harbaugh didn't coach in 6 games, regular season games, including the Ohio State game. And, they've got a guy on staff ready to take over. Like, I would not be surprised if they just turned to him to kind of keep the continuity. And he kind of proved himself in 6 games. So I think because it's almost, what we're seeing with the Patriots and the coach in waiting when Belichick is gone, I think if Harbaugh does leave, his top assistant who led the team to 6 wins is ready to take over. And they've got so much talent and so much depth, between Ohio State and Michigan. I don't really, and teams, obviously Alabama's going through a transition. I don't worry about drop off too much with those types of teams. I think the teams that really drop off are like surprising teams that kind of have a great season. And
Would that be like Washington, like for example, if they lose
Washington,
Penix?
We'll see kind of,
They also lost their coach too, so
yeah,
he
they
went to
lost their coach
Alabama.
and they just hired a really good coach from
Yeah.
Arizona. So, and then you kind of worried about, all right, well, Arizona is kind of that team that I'm referring to that sort of came from almost unexpectedly and had a really good, solid season and a really strong conference this year. So, with Michigan, I think it's like the same, that type of tradition, the type of program they've built, the money they have, the fundraising, the collectives. Like, I think no matter what happens, even with Corum and McCarthy leaving and maybe their head coach leaving, I still think they'll be picked along with Ohio State, up there at the top of the conference. And then obviously we've got Washington coming in and Oregon coming in. And so, I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, I hate to agree with you, but yeah, I'm gonna say that Michigan's still gonna be one of our problems. But I know we all said it was just about these 3 segments, but I want to kind of like pick your brain a little bit with Ohio State, because we know like Ryan Day, his success against Michigan has not been up to par, and I like him as a coach. I don't want them to get rid of him because I think he can beat them. He's already beat them once, but he hasn't beat them in a while. It's been a while since he's won. Do you think his days in Ohio State are going to an end? So, like, does he stay another season? Do they get rid of him this year, or do they wait till next year? And if he doesn't get them past Michigan and they lose again, and then they get bounced from the playoffs, do they even have him as the coach the following year in 2026? I believe that would be, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks to how intense and how important that rivalry is that we're even having this conversation. Because if
Exactly.
you have a coach that loses like 1 game a year, like you're in you're in a pretty good spot. But as as an Ohio State fan, like the season is judged how you do against your biggest rival.
Mm-hmm.
So, from a sane perspective, like he should definitely keep his job. He's winning most of his games. But I get it. I get the pressure. I get like, fans expect, Ohio State fans expect to beat Michigan, so I think the heat will just continue to be turned up. And while that's maybe not particularly fair, it's just the environment. And he knows that too. That's how coaches are judged when you coach Michigan or Ohio State. So, the other interesting wrinkle is they do have a new athletic director that was just hired this week. So it's an athletic director coming in that didn't hire him, right? So you never know how that's going to play out over the long term. But, he's got to beat
Michigan.
Michigan.
Yeah, I hope he doesn't fire him because I really like him. I like how
Yeah.
he's a player's first coach. He's all for his players, no matter what the quarterback situation was. Because we've never had that problem where I've been watching Ohio State was the first game I watched. I think it was against Oklahoma back in 2012. I want to say something around there. So I've been a fan of them for a while. A lot of people like to call me a bandwagon. But I'm like, nah, I'm not. I've been watching them for a while, but our problem was never the quarterback. It was really everything else. Like when we had Zeke, but we didn't have a stronger quarterback like a CJ Stroud or Justin Fields. We had average, but a little bit above average quarterback, similar to Dak Prescott, because I'm a Cowboys fan. He did one of those things in the playoffs this year. So like above average, but you had that running back, we had the offensive line, we had the defense. This year we had everything but the quarterback. Now, do you think with the transfer portal coming, we don't have Kyle McCord now. We have Brown, but in the bowl game against Missouri, he got like he didn't look like he could throw a pass. I don't know. Like, do you have any like insight of like what Ohio State might be doing to try to not go into the season with Brown? Not saying he's a bad quarterback, but what
Mhm.
I've seen of him, he's like a rookie basically, just thrown into a fire of a bunch of guys that don't. It doesn't seem like they want him there. If that makes sense. That's just from what I saw against Missouri. It didn't even look like they wanted him playing.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting, and I'm not sure what's going to happen at quarterback. But I think if you're an Ohio State fan, what you should be happy about is you just got to transfer running back from Ole Miss, who's kind of off the
He's
charts great.
Yeah, he's great.
Um, so maybe the offense shifts a little bit, around the personnel, right? Like all good coaches got to work around their personnel. Maybe you feature more of a running game, more of a Michigan type of running game. I mean, I know, Ryan Day has obviously had some great quarterbacks and great success, history of great success at Ohio State in terms of quarterbacks, but maybe things shift a little bit. But,
Mm.
I think they're still pretty, like Michigan, they're still pretty loaded. Most teams wish that they would have the problems that like a team like Ohio State might have at quarterback.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be okay. But I get if you're a fan, you're kind of worried, right? Because
Yeah, I'm like on the edge of my seat.
yeah,
Are we gonna do anything next year? Am I gonna
yeah,
watch my Ohio State Buckeyes like not even win a good amount of games because of the quarterback? But last couple things. Nick Saban retiring. Do you think he'll like do something in the NFL, or is he retired for good? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think he'll come back to something later on, or will he move like to do something with, I don't know, like I heard like a thing. Remember, this is like people talking. Maybe Bill Belichick and Nick Saban team up in the
yeah.
NFL, like something like that. Do you think that would ever happen with him? Because he's not that type of guy. I don't think that's just from my angle of just looking of way he's talked to people and how he is. He's not that type of guy that's going to team up with another great person and to like try to mimic something in the NFL. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I think in knowing him a little bit, covering him over the years, and just seeing what he said in the last week or so. I think he's done with coaching. I think he's got he didn't close the door on being a commentator, which would be really interesting.
Yeah,
Um, you
because
know,
he
and,
don't really talk that much.
yeah, I know. So it'd be very interesting to see him in that role. But I think he's embraced things more with the whole, him in the advertisements, the Affleck commercials with Deion Sanders. I think he's kind of embraced a little bit in the last, 5 years or so, kind of that side of things. And he is 72, right? So, I think for him to get back into pro coaching, maybe an advisory role, something like that. But I think he's done with colleges. I think, all the changes that have come in college football, particularly the last couple of years, has really changed the game for coaches that have been in it a long time. I think it's really, to see what's kind of happened and the movement and the money. And I think for guys like him, like I could totally see him being done and wanting to be done with that whole scene and sort of more embracing the pro stuff. Um, I mean, and Belichick, I see Belichick, like if he doesn't get back into NFL coaching, like him, coaching lacrosse or something. Like I think he's more like into being a coach, where I think Saban is ready to kind of move on.
Gotcha. Okay, because we've seen that a couple. I've also seen that in the MLB. Dusty Baker just a couple days. I think it was yesterday. He went. He's 73. He's going to be the manager for not the manager. he's going to be on the side
Yeah.
advisor for the San Francisco Giants. So that's like something that I thought that maybe like you have those two minds in the same building. Like imagine how good, like you still got to put the team players around him. And the problem with Belichick is like he wants it done his way,
Mhm.
but like now you don't have Tom Brady, so you can't really do it that way anymore. You got like the people that you have. Um, but do you think like Bill Belichick? I know you're with the college football, but Bill Belichick, we were just talking about, um, like him departing from New England. Do you what of just like a professional idea of like what do you think where do you think he will go?
Yeah, I mean, think it's really interesting that he interviewed with Atlanta. So I mean, he's kind of like Tom Brady, right? Like he leaves there, but he's not done with it, you know.
Exactly.
So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's coaching another team next year at all, because I think he still wants to coach and he still wants to be involved. Um, and great. I mean, he's the greatest pro coach that's ever been in the game. So, I could see why teams would want him. Um, at this point in his career, you know, if he's not done, who's us? Who are we to say like, Bill Belichick should be done? So I could totally see him um, doing kind of the Tom Brady, right? Like another year or two, and then kind of reevaluating, right? If you have success, great. If not, maybe move on and do something else.
Do you think like he'll go? Do you think at his age, because a lot of people are saying at his age it would not be smart to go to a team because he was just with a team that was basically rebuilding in the Patriots. I don't think that's smart to go to the Falcons. They don't got a quarterback. So like I don't know, like I'm not putting shade on Desmond Ryder, but like he's not the Atlanta Falcons' future quarterback. I'm sorry, he can't be because the way they had this year was not the best year for them, and they fired everybody. So I don't think that's the best case scenario. I thought maybe because he's older, he didn't want to deal with it in New England. Why would he want to deal with another franchise? Maybe go to like a ready team. Because if the Eagles might be looking to move on from Sirianni, the Cowboys might be looking on to move from Mike McCarthy. A lot of these teams that are ready to win now, um, could like use Bill Belichick, aka the Cowboys, please. But Jerry Jones won't do that because he's too stubborn. He will not do that. But so like, would you see him going to a team that is rebuilding or like a team that's ready? Because a lot of people are saying different stuff, and I wanted to see what somewhat basically an expert on the game of football would say about a coach because you just had one of the best coach to ever play in college football retire, and we got the best coach in the NFL part ways with his team that he's been there for 24 years. So where do you think was the best case scenario for Bill Belichick?
I'm with you in terms of like I think he's got to go to a team that has an established quarterback who's proven themselves as a star in this league, right? I mean, that's how Belichick won as much as he did, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they
exactly.
were they were a great team, and I think he's learned, right? Like it's really hard to win at a sustained level if you have certainly a rookie quarterback, an inexperienced quarterback, or somebody who's not that's doesn't have that potential to be among the top couple of quarterbacks in the league. So if I'm him, right, like I would think like, all right, I just did this. If I'm going to move into a different situation, I wanted to move into a situation where I have a Dak Prescott, right?
Or Jalen Hurts or something
Yeah,
like that.
for
Someone
sure.
that's proven and made it to the playoffs or at least to a Super Bowl and
Yeah,
have won games. But no, I'm happy
yeah,
that you agreed with me because I
yeah,
was like, I didn't know what to
yeah.
say to people because I'm like, well, I can't really say anything other than what I've seen, and a lot of people are saying he should go to Stephen A. Smith and everything. He's like, oh, he'll be stupid to go to a team that's not ready to win because he's of his age and whatever, and he had the same problem in New England. Um, but another couple questions. I know I'm picking your brain, but
No
this is
worries.
great to
Yeah,
have. But more on. I wanted to ask about Mac Jones because he came out of college. He was one of the best in Alabama. He had put up the stats and numbers. But do you think, from your professional opinion, what is his problem per se in the NFL? Why can't he not like, not because of course they don't really have wide receivers, but it's like he is like making boneheaded decisions where like even when I see it on the TV, I'm like, where do you see the safety moving and why are you throwing it to the wrong guy? So like what would you think is the reason for his lack of success in the NFL where he had it in college? And really, I know it's a different game, but it's not that different, I should say. I mean, the speed is different, the physicality, but the the game itself is really no different. So what are your thoughts on why Mac Jones really hasn't panned out the way he thought everyone thought he was going to be coming out of college in Alabama?
Yeah, I don't know if I can pinpoint one thing. I think it's kind of a combination of stuff that you touched on. I think a lot of it is just sometimes, guys don't rise up another level. Like even though you play for Alabama and you're playing against the best competition in the country, by and large, sometimes it just doesn't translate. And that's not a reason to give up on them, but I think when you do see a guy like CJ Stroud do what he's done this year, while it's remarkable, and that's definitely not a common occurrence, a guy coming into the league the first year doing what he's doing. I think a guy that's been around a couple of years, I don't know how many years Mac Jones has been in the league now, but
I think it's 3.
yeah,
I'm not mistaken, something around there, I
I think
believe.
you'd like to just see that maturation process, develop a little bit sooner. Like I totally get it the first year or two, the deer in the headlights, and it's just the unicorns like CJ Stroud that are going to have success their first year. But I would think generally speaking, like by year 3 or 4, if you're getting as many reps as he has gotten, right, you'd expect a little bit more out of somebody for sure.
But do you think that the confidence, like maybe his confidence is just shot because now they're starting Zappy. They started so many guys, and now it's Bill Belichick. But I didn't agree that that should have been the case. If that's your quarterback for the future, you got to stick with him, no matter if he's. I'm granted if he's playing extremely bad, where he's throwing picks every play, then you take him out, and maybe that gives him a reset. But he wasn't doing as bad as I've seen a lot of other quarterbacks done over the years. So what was the reason to just let him like get away from him? Because doesn't that diminish the confidence in your quarterback and also your team? Because you don't believe in your quarterback that's supposed to lead your team to the Super Bowl and the playoffs. So like what's your like take on that? Because that
Yeah.
just doesn't make sense to me.
And maybe this is the best thing, like he gets a fresh start, right? That fresh pair of eyes, even though it's somebody that was on the staff, a different perspective, and if things don't work out like that, whatever his next team might be. But
Gotcha.
hopefully, he'll get another shot, another chance to prove himself. And then, either it works or it doesn't work, and it's to move on.
Pretty
So
simple, pretty
yeah.
simple. All right, so for the last thing, I know you're college football, but I want to get your take since we don't have class anymore. I'll definitely see you,
Yes,
but I
you
want,
will. You
but
will.
before the playoff, well, the playoffs already started, but before the divisional rounds start in the NFL, I don't know if you watch the football as if you have, but we all know what happened in the Super Wild Card weekend. It was a Super Wild Card weekend of blowouts. There was literally one game that was close and everything else was terrible. So, what are your picks for? I want to see who you think is going to make the Super Bowl and who's winning this weekend's game. So, who do you got for like the Ravens, Texans, Kansas City, Buffalo, and all the games? I can spread them out just one by one. So, who do you got with Houston and Baltimore? Because that one's a different one. So, that's a
Yeah,
difficult one.
that's a really tough one. Uh, a former student of mine covers the Texans, so
Oh, okay.
I'm kind of hoping that he's got good stories to write. So I'll go with Houston on that one.
Hey,
Um,
I agree. I
yeah,
agree. Even
yeah,
though I picked Baltimore to get to the
yeah,
Super Bowl, but I'm like going with the biggest underdog story, and I think the biggest underdog story is the Houston Texans with the rookie
yeah,
quarterback. So I'm
yeah,
agreeing with you,
yeah.
Miss Whiteside, with
All
the
right.
Houston Texans.
Okay.
So
Um,
now no, not Browns. Kansas City Bills rematch of the best, probably best. Well, I would say best playoff game I've ever seen in my life, going back and forth the way they did. So who do you got? But now it's in Buffalo, Kansas City, and Patrick Mahomes on the road for the first time in his career. What do you got?
This I think is the toughest game. I mean, I think because it's in Buffalo, right? If it was in Kansas City, I'd go with I'm still going to go with Kansas City. Again, I'd go storylines. So I'll root for my former student and I'll root for Taylor Swift. So go with Kansas.
Hey, there we go. All right, so we have both the same thing. I'm going with Kansas City. I can't. My favorite player, other than the people on my Dallas Cowboys, is Patrick Mahomes. The way he's came into the league and just dominated, and the way he is, and how poised he is, and how nice of a guy he is. Like everyone says, he's a pretty good guy. So I like all that. So I got to root for Patrick Mahomes. And so we're 2 for 2. That's crazy. Me and you are both 2 for 2.
Good,
so
good.
now,
And I root for Pacheco too. So
I like Pacheco. He is a
that's
monster.
another reason. Yeah.
All right, cool. So we both have 2. We got Houston, Kansas City, and then the other 2 we have Green Bay, who demolished my Cowboys, which I am still very upset about. Taking on the 49ers. Now it's a little bit of a stretch. Marcus Spears did say on First Take, Get Up, I should say, a bold prediction is that he has the Green Bay Packers beating the 49ers, but bold prediction. So who do you have in that game? Because that's a little bit of a tricky one, since Green Bay literally blew out my Cowboys and we were down by 34 in the fourth quarter.
Well, yeah, and that's why I have Green Bay actually, because of
Whoa!
what they did, and I just think Love is playing great. So,
Oh my God. That is awesome. Well, I can't never go for the 49ers because of the Dallas Cowboys history. So I'm going to have to go with what you're saying.
Okay.
But for my betting people out there, maybe that might not be the best, but you can have them winning the game. But I don't think they're going. I think you can have them winning the spread. But winning the game is going to be a tough one. But we'll see. If it was in Green Bay, I think they would have a much better chance. But since it's in Santa Clara, that's going to be a tough one. But I'm going to still go with the Packers. Even though they beat my Cowboys, I just can't go for the 49ers. Never. Now, the last game we have is the Buccaneers versus the Lions in Detroit. So what are your thoughts on that game? Because that's a little bit of a weird one.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I again kind of root for the good story. So, which is kind of like in journalism, you always root for the good story. You root for your story as opposed, or people maybe you like on the team or whatever. But I just would love to see Detroit keep winning. I don't think they will.
You think the Bucs will win?
I actually think the Bucs are going to win. I would love for Detroit to keep winning, but I don't know. I just sort of have this feeling that Detroit maybe went as far as it could go, but I hope I'm wrong. Actually.
So you think the Bucs will win, but you're going for the Lions.
I would like the Lions to win.
Okay.
I think the Bucs are going to win.
All right, cool.
I would like the better story, kind of the feel good story of Detroit winning. So that's what I would like. That's what I hope happens, but I actually think Bucs will win.
Gotcha. Well, I'm going to go with the Lions. I'm going to go with Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson, all of them old guys. Even Matthew Stafford, I know, is going to be rooting for his Lions to go win against the Buccaneers. I just think they have everything going for them. Yeah. I mean, just them beating the Rams, Matthew Stafford coming back to his hometown, and then to make the statement to beat him and win in the fashion that they won by just 1 point. I would think that they're going to push that momentum first the Bucs. Now, they are not, I don't think they're beating the other team who comes out of that NFC East game.
Yeah.
But to get to the NFC Championship, where last year they got snubbed and the year before that they were one of the worst teams in the NFL. So I think that's a great thing. So I got them moving on to the NFC Championship and beating the Bucs. So we're basically kind of every game right. Me and you are kind of on the same page.
Yeah.
Now
I mean, I hate to root against Eminem too. So like I want there's a whole lot of reasons. So I hope your picks ultimately are 4 successful ones.
I hope so too, because I didn't go. I went 4-2, I think, in the Super Wild Card weekend. I lost to my Dallas, and I picked actually the Rams to beat the Lions, because I thought Matthew Stafford coming back was gonna like captivate him, and he's like, you know what, my whole team ain't beating me or something like that, and he was gonna come out, which he did play really well. He just the Lions played better. Now for the NFC Championship game, who do you have winning those? So if we have the line, let's say the Lions win and the Packers win, who do you got winning that to go to the Super Bowl?
Well, I kind of have to stay with the Packers because I picked against the Detroit, so I'll stick with the Packers. Though
All right.
again, it would be great if Detroit won, but I'll stick with the Packers.
If the Packers get there, it's going to be a different story. If the 49ers get there, then the 49ers are going to win. I
Yeah,
think if the Packers get there, Detroit has a chance to make the Super Bowl.
yeah,
So if
yeah.
the Packers get there, I'm going to go with Detroit, actually. Never mind.
Good, good,
So I'm going with Detroit. I'm
yeah,
rocking with Detroit. So
good.
Detroit will be in the championship game. I mean the Super Bowl. And then for the AFC, you have Kansas City and the Texans. And I believe that would be in Kansas City.
Yeah.
So CJ Stroud versus Patrick Mahomes, the rookie versus the veteran, and probably the best quarterback that we've ever seen, mobility wise, throwing wise, everything basically. So who do you got in that game?
I get Kansas City.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's hard to bet against my man CJ Stroud, but
Yeah,
you're versing Patrick Mahomes. You can't
yeah,
bet against him.
yeah.
All right, so for the Super Bowl, we have Patrick Mahomes versus Jared Goff. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Detroit versus Kansas City. Who do you got winning the Super Bowl?
I mean, I wish I could be not boring, but I've got Kansas City. I mean, I just think they're still got the most talent.
Yeah, I got that. Their problem is that they drop a lot of passes,
Hmm.
and they really try everything in the world not to help out Patrick Mahomes when he needs it the most. So that's why if they keep down those stuff and the penalties on offense and stop backing themselves out of field goal range and out of the end zone, I think they'll be fine. But we'll see about those passes, because against the Dolphins, they didn't drop no passes, but against everybody else in the league, they dropped a lot of passes. So we'll
Hmm.
see what happens. So we both have Kansas City winning the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Let's hope all our picks. If all our picks, I'm reposting this on every social media platform and be like, well, me and Kelly Whiteside literally picked the playoffs for the foreseeable future from the division round to the Super Bowl. Let's
I'm
hope that
with you.
happens.
I'm
Let's
with
hope
you.
that happens. And I'm going to tag you and everything. I'm going to be like, Kelly Whiteside said this, said that, said this. We got it all right.
Sounds good.
But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Here for my show on the YouTube show on the Fire Sports Pod, where everything we do here is fire. Again, Kelly, thanks for coming on to my show. It was a pleasure talking about some college football and some other stuff that we just randomly said about college football and stuff like that. A lot of questions were answered from my part, from coming from a professional as of yourself. So I appreciate you coming on and taking your time on a Wednesday in
Sure
this freezing cold weather.
thing.
So I appreciate you coming on. Thanks, Kelly.
Anytime, Zach.
All right, so I'm just going to end the show, and that's pretty much it, guys. I'm your
All right.
host, Zach Jackson, and this is my guest host, Kelly Whiteside. Peace out, guys.